Hi, and welcome to session 6 in our Eat Well Home Group series. You know, the last session was about sacrifice and fasting. The lack of food. Fasting, particularly giving up of food. Today, we are looking at feasting. Fasting, feasting. And throughout the whole of this series, we are going through systematically through the Bible and looking at every single food analogy there is. That's why it's called Food Gospel Analogies, right? There are so many references in the Bible related to feasting. There are banquets, there are Jewish feasts, there are festivals with eating, right? The Passover has eating in it. People are eating together, they're celebrating together. And so, but I think as we think about all of this food in these food analogies that are in the Bible, I think sometimes we can get a bit confused, especially when it comes to feasting, because feasting is mentioned in the Bible for a particular reason. Feasting has a very crucial function in the Bible, and it's not what you might think. Because feasting is actually not the opposite of fasting. That's right. The opposite of fasting is gluttony. All right? So if you are not fasting, you're eating a lot of food. Feasting is actually something different altogether. In Bible times, when a host threw a feast or a banquet, it actually wasn't for him to just have this many plates in front of him and eat it all himself. Feasting was never about the individual consumption of lots and lots of food. Like today we think, I'm feasting, right? So I'm going to go off and I'm going to eat a lot of food myself. What you have to understand is in the Bible, when the Bible talks about it, these banquets, they were actually more acts of hospitality. They were acts of generosity. They were acts of sharing what I have with everybody around. So, feasting is seen as sharing what you have with others for the benefit of others together. That's why, there's even that parable in the Bible where Jesus tells the parable with a banquet and all the people that he invites, because Jesus wants as many people to come to this banquet as possible, but he invites all these very important people and they've got one excuse after another excuse. If it was about the quantity of food and eating of food, Jesus would have said, brilliant. Everybody invited hasn't come. More food for me. That's not the point. The point was that the banquet was there so that it could be a blessing to others. And so what does Jesus do in that parable? He goes out to every person out on the street, all the beggars, anybody else, anybody who wants to come and says, hey, why don't you come and have this feast? You need to understand that today as we're talking about feasts, that feasting is linked with hospitality. That's why the topic today is hospitable. There's a food analogy in the Bible, and it's there to encourage you to be more hospitable. It's about doing fellowship and community well. And often at FGA, it involves food. I mean, let's just be practical about it. You don't even have to think about analogies or all these kind of fancy things. If you have a ton of good food, and you invite friends over, automatically there's going to be fellowship, right? These things have been so ingrained into our culture and our life. So just understand that when the Bible talks about feasting, it's trying to talk about hospitality, and it's not trying to talk about gluttony. We're not talking about eating KFC all by yourself, until you drop dead from being full. It is, and I think this point is brought home even more. It's cemented home with Jesus as he runs communion. So it is at the table. It's called usually the Lord's table, the communion table, that Jesus himself reveals that life is for sharing. That life is sharing. Jesus bears his own life, his own flesh, his own blood for others. At the banquet table, at the communion table. So today, we're actually going to be doing communion in the home, as a home group. All right. We've gone through in this series a whole range of food related things that we do, from saying grace, through to fasting and giving up of food. Today, we're looking at communion and how communion at the table was God saying, share with me, commune with Jesus. And I'm going to go into some, again, pretty gross things. Unfortunately, if you're going to do a serious research into food, you've got to talk about some pretty gross things. But food, the eating of food, is actually one of the most intimate things you can do. The most intimate thing you can do is eat something, because it becomes you. I eat this egg. Eventually this egg becomes part of me. And so I'm going to read this just so that it's in the Bible. Every pastor skips over it, say they never mention it in Sunday service, but we're doing a deep dive into food, right? And we're looking at communion. I'm going to read John 6:53 to 58. Just so you get a sense of Jesus sharing his very life like a feast for us. So Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, I live because of the Father, so whoever feeds on me, he also will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like the bread that the fathers ate and then died. Whoever feeds on this bread will live forever." I know it's a little bit weird, but Jesus is saying that we are to be in community with him. We're to commune with him. We're to do communion. When we take communion, we partner in with Jesus. You are seeing Jesus use food as his act of hospitality, as he shares his very life with us. And then we are called to do the same with food, to use food for hospitality and be more hospitable, which is going to be the topic for today. We're invited into a community world that Jesus has created. I hope you have a great discussion today. God bless.